Okay.
I've decided I'm not going to script this. I'm just going to roll off the cuff and hope I can edit. I'm going to edit off the cuff too, but we'll see how that goes. I just, after a long time of thinking about stuff while doing other stuff that I don't enjoy at all, because that's what happens, is your mind wanders when you're doing stuff you hate. I started, just naming things I notice in the world, and after a while these names are starting to just become a problem, because they're very useful to have. Things happen, you notice stuff, and you think, it's good to have a word for that thing, so I don't have to keep explaining the entire thing every time. But I made up the word and no one else knows what I'm talking about, so I have to do it every time anyway. So look, fuck it, I'm making a video where I take something that I've named and explain what it is, tell you what my name for it is, and then I guess beg that somebody on the internet who knows what the thing's actually called can come to me and tell me what the fuck it's called. So this one's real simple because it's just one thing with a name I gave it. And that one thing I call a downhill rule. What do I mean when I say it's a downhill rule? I hope that I'm not impinging on some kind of statistics terminology here. A downhill rule is some kind of rule that's on the books, and there has to be something true about the rule. It's a rule that everyone is, first of all, expected to follow at all times, without exception. And then the second part of it is, it has to be something outlandishly hard to consistently always follow at all times. And I call this downhill, because it's something that you have to actively remember to and how to follow. What could an example be? I'm making this up, and so this is contrived and dumb. But say there's some new thing where you have to sign a sign-in sheet when you go into work, and that's completely separate and different from your regular old clocking in situation. This was just instated as well, and they didn't bring it up in a meeting or anything like that. So it's something that you have to notice and then remember on a consistent basis, and that's a downhill rule. Because I guarantee you somebody's forgetting to sign in. What's another possible example of a downhill rule? One that I remember specifically getting called out by some college students who did a little experiment on a highway. The highway had a speed limit of 55 miles an hour. Everyone drove way faster than that. And to make this point, a group of college students lined 4 cars up in a line across this highway and then went exactly the speed limit, and then sent some people further down the highway to film when they arrived. And sure enough, by the time they got to where the cameras were, there was a sea of cars behind them. Everyone was angry, no one was happy, they were all going exactly the speed limit. Every single person on that highway speeds. Now the police just have free reign to just fucking pull over anybody, and if they don't find anything they're suspicious about, they can just say, well, you were going above 55, so that's at least a speeding ticket. We already got you for one thing. Now, I've had more experience hearing about this. I did work with a guy one time long ago who was training to become a police officer, and one of the things he just decided to tell us, did you know, apparently there's some ordinance on the books somewhere in some obscure volume that says you have to have, it had to do with your interior lights, I think? Or was it a piece of paper you needed to keep in your glove box that nobody... Point is, these things are obfuscated from general public knowledge compared to, say, stopping at a stop sign. That's much less of a downhill rule than this obscure thing that, case closed. No one follows this rule. Now, you just have something to hold over people's heads, and that's it. It's a downhill rule because you fall into it. You have to actively try to not break the rule. Rules against robbery are not a downhill rule, not because people, don't find their options limited and start getting desperate, but specifically because robbery is something you have to choose to do. It's a downhill rule if you can just find yourself breaking it one day. It's not something that you choose to break. It's something that you just are informed later on you started breaking at some point and you were not aware of it during, and that's mechanically necessitated. I kind of hope somebody already had a name for this and maybe fleshed it out a lot more than that, but this is probably one of the clearer concepts I've been coming up with over time. Very often I find myself saying, oh, there is a name for that in my life. And this, hopefully, is a good idea that will have me saying that more often. If not, I mean, I'm happy to make up a name for something. Downhill Rule. It's all yours.